customize your resume to tailor it exactly to the job description, but I think what you're going to find out is the jobs you're most interested in applying to are often going to have keyword match, a quality of keyword match in the job description that's in line with what's on your resume in terms of the kinds of courses you've done, the kinds of languages you've coded in, the kinds of OSs you've worked in, things like that. And so I would just, try to make sure you align yourself to those kinds of jobs that sort of map well to your resume background. Flipping back just for a brief second to the LinkedIn thing, because I can't let it pass without sharing it, is that we talked about what needs to be on your profile, but how to use it is a whole nother thing too. And I may regret saying this out loud, but a lot of times if you can build your network of connections and you're one connection away from somebody who's a VP or a director of engineering at a company that you want to get at, whether it's Intel or someplace else, if you can find some of your connections who will pass along a recommendation to somebody in that kind of a role, the very first thing they do is they send it to either the director of HR, the director of recruiting, or a recruiter that they know. And guess what? When I get an email from a VP that says, hey, can you check this resume out? It just instantly goes to, electronically speaking, at least to the top of the pile. So, and you might ask yourself, well, how can I do this stuff with a LinkedIn profile? And the answer is, your parents or you have already spent enough on college that another $30 or $40 a month isn't going to kill you when you're in the job search mode. Get a paid LinkedIn account, because it gives you, just like Kristen alluded to, our LinkedIn recruiter tool returns search results against everybody in LinkedIn. So does yours if you fork out that $40 a month or whatever it is these days for a job seeker account. And it gets you, I think, 5 or 6 in-mails a month too, which is an opportunity to reach out directly to those people. So that's my LinkedIn tip for the day, which is don't be afraid to spring for the paid account, get better visibility in your search results, and blow your own whistle to people in your network who are one person away from the company that you want to work for.
Great, Mike. Thank you. Yeah. And the other part of that same person's question was, and for the current software engineering grad students who are yet to graduate, are there any specific skills or technologies that you might suggest that they should focus on that would make them more fit for the current industry in your company, in Intel?
I would say Python is a skill that we're looking for that even from non-software engineers. Kathleen and Mike, I don't know if you agree. Yep. Python is critical. True. C, C++. There's variety. When we talk about software engineers, I often think of them on a spectrum, right? And so you've got the firmware and embedded that are closer to the hardware, and we always seem short of those people, right? And generally the embedded engineers or the firmware engineers have either done electrical engineering or computer engineering. They want to program closer to the hardware or program to make the hardware work, and that we look for people that have experience with doing drivers on different operating systems, OS or Linux or Windows, or a lot of different kind of the key programming languages are C, C++. When you're getting more towards, as you start moving down that spectrum to like software-y, it can be all different. Like there's software engineers all over Intel. Mike was mentioning we hire software engineers that use EDA software, and there's 3 big vendors: Synopsys, Cadence, Mentor Graphics. And we're often hiring software engineers that can kind of go into those tools and automate the steps that some of our physical design engineers are doing, or our verification engineers. The other skills that it's hardware description languages, HDL, and those are things like Verilog, System Verilog, UVM is kind of the test bench that they do on. I don't know if any of these sound familiar. I really am hoping they do. But even our validation and verification engineers, where we look for Verilog, System Verilog, UVM, OVM, we would love if they had Python still. So Python just seems to be, whether it's a data science job or an electrical engineering or product development engineer or a physical design engineer, Python just seems so universal now.
Great. The next question is, should we add our resume to our LinkedIn profile? And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and answer this one. First, thought is yes, because it helps me out so much if I can reach out to you directly. But then the second thought that came up is any recruiter from any company can have access to your contact information that way. So it might be better that you don't at least keep your phone number on there, for example. Maybe if you want your email, or use an email that you'll only use for job searching on that resume that's attached to LinkedIn. Or, if they have a paid-in recruiter account, they can still send you an in-mail, and you can reach back to them if what they're, coming at you with is of importance to you. Any other thoughts, Mike or Kristen?
No, I think those are all apt points, and I guess the only other sort of, it's not so much focused on the resume in LinkedIn, because I think that my guidance to people when they come to Leap, or guidance about writing a resume, is make sure that the LinkedIn profile looks almost identical to your resume. In fact, you should take great care to make sure that there's no factual differences between the two. When I look at somebody who's an experienced engineer that has 10 jobs listed on their LinkedIn profile, contiguous to each other, and then 5 on their resume, that's a giant red flag. Now, you're less likely to have those issues in school, but it's still worth making a note that I think in all the ways that are checkable, your LinkedIn profile and your resume should look the same. And going back to the LinkedIn profile, don't forget to start adding all of your colleagues in college as connections, because those people 2 or 3 years down the road, when you're ready for your first job change, they're all going to be at 20 or 30 different companies themselves, and that's your first network for your first job change after you get out of school, unless of course you come to Intel, where you'll work your entire career.
Great. Next question is, can we add part-time campus jobs on the resume?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Flashing back to GPA for a second, if you have a less than great GPA, but it's because you have to work your butt off because you're funding your own education, some of you might have seen my phrase, evidence of excellence, in the chat window. Those are all indicators. I graduated with a 2.7 GPA, but I was working a third shift job, and I had a very bad freshman year. We won't go there, okay? But it's hard to mathematically recover to get to a 2.7 without a lot of high 3-somethings after a really bad freshman year. All of those things, if you can find a way to get something that conveys it concisely on your resume, can only help you. Don't be afraid if you have a lower than average or lower than you like GPA to tell people a story as to why, particularly if it points out some real sort of I'm a hardworking kind of person attributes.
Yeah,
awesome.
Grit. That's grit.
Yeah.
That's
Grit,
really hard to, there's no question that any of us can come up with to ask to find out if you have grit. Grit comes through in the interview. And that's a perfect example of, I would be talking and find out this person really has grit.
Next question is, how can a student without a computer science background apply for a role like a technical product manager? That's a tough one.
I think product manager roles are tough to come by right out of college, to be quite honest, and just my honest opinion. Generally, product managers are people that, in my time, this isn't saying the truth, because by the way, my former boss just told me that her daughter, who's graduating from USC with her bachelor's, is starting at Microsoft as a product manager. Wow, I was shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I have another former colleague. I'm working with his daughter who's in high school, and she's like, I want to be a product manager. And I'm like, what? How do you even know what a product manager is? Why? Like, now I'm meeting with her, right? And clearly, her dad's an engineer, right? And he's telling her, be a product manager. So I'm talking to him and saying, Con, by the way, he's a Northeastern grad. Why are you telling her to go be a product manager? Like, product managers, and by the way, I'm not pooping on product managers here, but that's a tough job. Product managers are a tough job, right? You have to know the product and then come up with a strategic plan to either market it or whatever. But the product managers I know at my old company and at Intel have mostly come from electrical engineering backgrounds or computer engineering backgrounds. Not necessarily computer science background. So that's a little more specific question that would be tough for us to answer not knowing the company. I don't think not every product manager comes from a computer science background. And by the way, I have recruited for product managers at Intel that have no engineering background. But come from business.
That's great. The next question has to do with the ATS, and if someone has a table or several tables in their resume, will they translate okay into the ATS? And these days, the answer is yes, especially if you send it as a PDF, it will come across, right? Technology has improved quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say be careful of having tables in your resume, though. I'd question what the table is and why do you need a table in your resume. It might be for something good, though, right? If you're a PhD student and you're writing papers, right, and you're listing the papers, you want to make sure if you're a first author, you're listing those papers or patents or whatever. But I'd question why you have tables. We don't see a lot in resumes, but you might have a perfectly good reason to have a table in your resume.
Thank you. The next question is, can we please provide some examples of projects that software engineer interns have worked on recently? Do you have any examples of you placed people that worked on projects that got to tell you a little bit about their experience?
I just, actually, this guy, Kyle, who worked at Intel, and he was doing, so he was a computer engineering undergrad. He's now getting his master's in electrical engineering, and he was doing a lot. I don't know how much I can say of this in terms of letting out secrets, but he's working a lot on Python. He's writing a lot of Python scripts. He's using this software called Redo Docker or something like that. And he's having to automate and also look at the C++ code, and he's looking for bugs to make it quicker. And that's it as an intern, right? Now, I was kind of saying, tell me what's a typical day for you, and I don't know what the heck that is, but I got a better understanding as I did it, but I'll defer to Mike, our electrical engineer with the software background.
Well, I just posted a link. This organization has hired quite a few interns, and we've converted a bunch of interns too. And so, I mean, it's an example. I don't think it's the only example within Intel. It's the only one I have firsthand experience with, which is why I'm putting it in there. And another thing that's worth mentioning is that, and there's no guarantee that anything stays the same forever, but Intel, for students that are coming here as foreign nationals, has been historically a great place to start their career because Intel takes a really robust approach towards looking at people who, even if they need sponsorship, and then once they move into an H-1B kind of role, getting them to a green card. It's the kind of an employment relationship that we're looking for people who are ready to commit to us, and in return we do our best to try to commit to them too. I guess probably the best way I can think of to say it.
Thank you, Mike. That almost answered this next question, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Being an international student, I don't need H-1B sponsorship for co-op or internship, and I can work for 3 years full-time after graduating without any requirement of sponsorship. But in all the job applications, applicants are asked the questionnaire to fill in whether they will need sponsorship in the future. Should I answer if I need the sponsorship or not? I've seen a trend in my rejects where if I keep in there that I do need sponsorship in the future, I'm rejected mostly within a day or two. Please share your thoughts here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, good. I was just going to say, I would be honest. My heart breaks right now, given the market, especially for our international dear colleagues that are trying to get hired. At Intel, we sponsor, when it comes to college, right, we sponsor at the master's level and above. We don't sponsor at the bachelor's level. So if you apply for an internship or a full-time role at the bachelor's level, you're going to get a thing that's saying does not meet minimum qualifications, the minimum qualification being that we don't sponsor at the bachelor's level, just at the master's and above. The worst thing you can do, though, is not answer the questionnaire honestly. And I know where you're coming from. You're like, well, I would have OPT, right? But Mike is going to come along. Mike's a recruiter. And you're going to have answered. And by the way, Intel asks that question, right? So if you're bachelor's and, oh my gosh, we have an electrical engineer, 4.0. If the sourcer sees that you answered that you don't require sponsorship, they're going to push that through, right? And you're going to be interviewed, right? Mike's going to go to make you an offer. And then, Mike, tell him what's going to happen.
Well, we'll find out about all these extra steps that we have to take that we didn't know we had to take. And all of a sudden, it does a few things all at once. And it either calls into question your attention to detail or your forthrightness. And it also suddenly makes other candidates potentially look better than you do because we can't always, particularly in the case of bachelor's degree grads, as Kristen mentioned, we don't sponsor. But I guess to give you maybe a more positive answer, I would suggest that big companies, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies like Intel, we know that we always need to be adding the next generation of talent, and we know that a significant percentage of those people are going to come to us with a need for sponsorship. And we have processes. In fact, if you go through the Intel process, you'll see there's a legal questionnaire that we ask that's really specific. It says, if you answer yes to the, I'm going to need visa sponsorship, it'll say, okay, it'll ask clarifying questions that will point to the fact that you can work on an OPT. And we know what OPT is all about. I write OPT letters for OPT and CPT letters from my managers all the time. Sorry, CPT letters. No, wait. In school, OPT.
Awesome.
OPT letters. So we'll take care of you. Just be forthright so we know, what bucket to put you in and how to advance you correctly.
Great. And right now, go ahead, please.
One other thing, we normally don't hire interns that require sponsorship because the whole point of Intel's intern program is we want to be able to convert you, right? And we don't often get to convert. We can't convert an intern who requires sponsorship. However, there's some really hard intern jobs, and we can't find anybody, right?